I really want to keep this going. We have a lot of ground to cover, about 70 to 80 pages in the permit book. It's a lot to cover. She talked about the bathroom breaks. I will take breaks as we go. If for some reason you have a bladder that needs to keep going, that's fine. The door's over there. Help yourself, just get up and go to the bathroom. Okay, you don't need to ask me to go. We're in an adult program here. Everybody with me on that so far? Mm-hmm. Great, now just remember, if you touch either one of the doors up front here, those are under alarm systems. So don't say, oh, that's cool, let's go check it out. No, we're not doing that. Breaks, we try to get back from breaks pretty relatively soon. Okay, again, I have a lot of material. The faster I can get into it, the more I can get into you, the more I can help you acquire what you're trying to get through here today. Let's see, what else? I think that kind of covers a lot of it. We're gonna go through the permit book. If you have tablets, if you have phones that you wanted to follow along on the DMV website, go ahead, I got this up. It's on the DMV website. And I'm going through it. This will go play by play in the CDL manual you have in front of you. Okay, so if you have an older manual, you may see a couple words changed out here and there. Okay, thought process first. I can read all this information into you, and there's a good chance you won't remember it. All right. When you go down to take the test at the DMV for your permit, I need to have you understand a couple things. One, understand what they're asking. Okay. Sometimes students will overthink what they're doing. They'll be like, well, under this scenario it's like this, but under that scenario it's like that. And they overthink it, then they miss the question, and then they have a problem. Another factor we need to get into is some of us may not have taken a test in a very long time. Okay? You understand what I mean by that? This may have been a while. So I have to kind of go, okay, we have to understand that. So the more tests you can take, the better this will be. I will give you a practice site that you can go on, and you can take these tests over and over and over and over and over and over. Some of it will be very close to the information you may see on the permit, some of it may not be, okay? But it's still information in. Did I lose anybody yet? The faster you nod your heads, the faster we keep moving. Okay, and you will find, yes, I do interact a lot. Okay, I look at everybody right in the eyes, so if you have a complex, I will catch it. And I do try to have fun. Okay, the more you laugh, the more you enjoy this, the more retention you will have. Okay, if you're having a tough time remembering something, put something profound next to it or put something funny next to it and you remember it. That's how we do it. If you need something explained, don't be afraid to say, hey, could you explain that a little bit differently? I can turn this whole thing into plumbing, I can turn it into carpentry, I can turn it into anything that might work for you, okay? That's why we've had success with this particular part of the program. All right, we will be covering a few of the chapters in the book. We'll be doing section 1, section 2, section 4, and section 5. Not going to get through all that tonight, okay? The first section is just the introductory. It's going to kind of talk a little bit about what's going on here. The second section is your actual general knowledge, your main body of the whole situation, and that's good. The chapter 4 is going to be your passengers. And you're going to see a lot of overlap between the chapters there, between general knowledge and passenger. And then the last one will be chapter 5. That will be air brakes. I will teach air brakes tomorrow night. Why am I not doing it tonight? Because I want that fresh in your mind before you go to the DMV. That can get a little complex for people, okay? I understand what it's like sitting in your seat. If it's an open seat up here, that's fine there. All right. Any good questions before I get going on the book? I'm doing it with remote mouse, so yes, I do have the mouse. I have it in my pocket here. There's a whole different definition to it. Let me back out of this. Yes, this is different. Couldn't find my pointer, so I'm using a remote mouse, which is different. Makes it a little bit fun and challenging for me. Now, I'm trying to blow this up the best I can. I need about 200% out of it, which I think the board should be a little bit higher, and I think I should be way in the back. But if I go more than 200%, folks, I can't. I'd be switching back and forth this whole time. I can't do it. So 200%, that's about as much as I can blow it up. You have a question, sir?
Yeah. Our questions on the Multiple choice?
Yes.
Okay.
So we will be going over process of elimination, how to help yourself through that, yes, absolutely. Yeah, if they were fill in the blank, we'd never get permits issued. Okay, so any other questions? Moving on. So the first section here, section 1, I'm just gonna kind of scroll through this. You will find there's some material I will go right past. I'll skim right over and say, moving on. Because if it's not going to be relevant to your particular situation and your testing and your knowledge, and I know they're not gonna ask those questions on the permit test, I'm not gonna waste your brain space filling that in too. Does that make sense? So I can only get just so much in there in such a short time. If you can't hear me in the back, just yell at me. I have a tendency I can't talk loud enough, that's one of the reasons. Yes, you had a question?
We can keep the books?
Yes. Yep, those are yours, so make notes in them. Do what you gotta do with them. The best you can do in there is just take a lot of notes. Absolutely. Any other questions? Can everybody hear me okay in the back? Am I doing okay?
Yeah.
Wow, I got it covered for once. Don't worry, by the third hour, I'll be like, Okay, so first one is commercial motor vehicles. You must have a commercial driver's license or CDL or a commercial learner permit to operate any of the following vehicles. That's any single vehicle with a gross vehicle weight rating of 26,000 pounds or more. Here's your threshold, okay? 26,000 pounds is your tipping point. With 26,000 pounds, once you get over that, we are into a specialized license, okay? That means we have to get into a CDL, commercial driver's license. Anything under 26,000 pounds, different category, folks. That's your regular Class D license, that's your taxi, stuff like that. Totally different situation. So when you're into the buses and what you're looking to get into with a career here, we're over 26. That's us. Now, if you have a trailer with more than 10,000 pounds, again, that's not going to be anything to do with us, but just understand that if you have a trailer over 10,000 pounds, hooked up to that 26,000, now we're into a Class A. The trailer's under 26, or under 10,000, you're back into a B. A vehicle designed to transport 15 or more passengers, excluding the driver, or a vehicle defined as a bus under Article 19A. When we see 19A, what does that translate to us? Anybody know? Hauling school kids a lot of times. That'll translate into that. So when you see that, just go, okay, are we hauling kids here? Okay. If we get into just the passenger vehicle, now we're talking into more than 15 or more, and I'm pretty sure, just a lucky guess, but I'm pretty sure the buses you're going to be looking to drive are more than 15 passenger. Just out of curiosity, how many passenger are they? Do we know? Amy, do we know? How many passengers can we haul in the big buses that you're running? 40? Pretty good size, huh? All right, cool. So that does fit this category. An altered vehicle, like a stretch limousine, would fall under this. Any size vehicle that requires hazmat would also fall under this. The exemptions, there's a few exemptions here that I'm just going to kind of brush over. Vehicle owned and controlled by a farmer with a gross vehicle weight rating more than 26,000 pounds and is used to transport ag products within 150 miles. Again, I'm going to jump over a lot of this because it's not pertinent. Off-road motorized construction equipment, stuff like that. Fire and police vehicles, military vehicles, and personal vehicles, including rental vehicles up to 26,000 pounds. Any questions yet? We're good yet? We're getting the hang of how I'm teaching. We're getting the hang of this stuff? Great. All right. Now, when it comes to the classifications, you'll constantly hear, do I have a Class A? Do I have a Class B? What do I have? Class A, that's something that has articulation in it. It means it has movement, a pivot point. So a tractor trailer, we have the pivot point. That's articulation. There's an A. Remember, if the whole unit is more than 26,000 pounds, the trailer is more than 10, we're an A. If you just have the single unit, now we're into a B. So there's your dump trucks, your buses, straight fuel trucks, stuff like that, garbage trucks. That's where your B kicks in. Does everybody understand that? Okay, now the question always comes up, and this is part of a thought process for you. If you have a bus license and it's a B, you can drive everything underneath that bus. So you can do the bus, you can go out and drive dump truck, you can do whatever below that. If you just take a road test in the dump truck, you can't drive bus. So that's like an upgraded B. Does that make sense? Everybody with me on that? We're good? Okay. So that'll dismiss a lot of it right there for you. Exemptions, endorsements, stuff like that. Can you have a CDL without endorsements? Yes, absolutely you can, okay? CDL means a commercial driver's license. In order to get a commercial driver's license, you need to take core tests. They call them core tests. The core test you will be taking is one, general knowledge. Okay, it's going to be about 50 questions. You're going to have to take air brakes, okay, because they're air brake equipped vehicles. That's a core test, that's not an endorsement. And then passenger, okay? Does everybody understand? We're good? Okay. Now, does that mean I can't have the license if I don't get metal coils? No, those are core tests, take your core tests. The passenger, notice how that's an endorsement. So your core test to drive a bus will include passenger. You have to have that as a core in order to drive a bus. Does that make sense? So that kind of becomes a core. Moving on, restrictions, if you have any of these restrictions, any problems with that, it's like a regular license that way, not a big deal. Moving on to the CDL or permit. CDL and CLP classes, endorsements, and restrictions are based on the type vehicle you're driving. The type of commercial motor vehicle is determined by the vehicle's manufactured gross vehicle weight rating, gross combination weight rating, or construction or use. Let me talk about these numbers here really quick in this terminology. Gross vehicle weight rating versus gross vehicle weight. As we go through this, you're going to hear these terms a lot. So gross means the most, right? Lump sum? Okay. When you get into vehicle, we're talking about the entire unit, okay? If we're combination, now we have combination in that, gross combination weight rating. For what we're doing with the B, it's gross vehicle weight rating. Now, there's two different ratings that we're looking at here, two different weights we're looking at. One is the rating of the vehicle. So that rating of the vehicle is a number that is set by the manufacturer as to how much weight can be that whole unit grossing going down the road. Make sense? Fantastic. That also has to be there has to be a registered weight, right? We have to license this thing. So that registered weight could be up or down from that, depending on the vehicle. And then the third number we're going to look at is really what is the actual weight? What's your gross vehicle weight? So if we pull that thing on a scale, what is it weighing right now actually? Does that make sense? Okay? Because those are different numbers. Now, when you talk about the Department of Motor Vehicles, they go with the biggest number, the maximum number. That's what they want to look at. So let's say you have a vehicle that's weighing in at 25,000 pounds. Do I need a CDL? No, 26 is the number, right? Yeah. But what if that was the weight rating? What if that was the registered weight? Okay, but I pull on the scale and I weigh 27,000 pounds on the scale. You see how I'm out of class now. Yeah. So if I didn't have the license, I'm out of class. So we're always watching these numbers. And that's where we're getting into with this, okay? So commercial driver's license, commercial learner permit requirements, New York State driver's licensing standards comply with the federal laws related to commercial driver's licenses and commercial learner permits. Again, I want to point this out so you understand that I'm laying the layers in as we build into this understanding of getting this permit. Two levels of laws that we're always dealing with. I have no idea what I just did. That's the problem with having it in your pocket and doing this. So you're always dealing with federal law and you're always dealing with state law. Now the permit, is the permit on a federal or state level? State. Correct. State. There we go. That's something. But the state also has to abide by the federal. Okay, that's why we were talking, and you may have already heard this, as of February 7th, the standards changed, right? Everybody heard that? The training standards changed. Basically, the federal law command says everyone across the U.S. is going to meet these criteria, these standards, and do their training like this. That's what we're doing. So that's the difference. So the state will require and meet all those standards as well. Now, U.S. Legal presence is a requirement here. We're talking about what's required here to get the permit. U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents must provide proof of citizenship or unrestricted lawful permanent residency at a DMV office. Once you have met this requirement at a DMV office, you will not be required to prove your legal status again. Applicants from a foreign jurisdiction must provide proof of your legal presence at a DMV office for every transaction. Please refer to that form, and you can find that on their site. Submit it as proof of what they're going to accept as proof, okay? Take your birth certificate with you, folks, okay? Passport work, stuff like that. Residency requirements.
Social Security card too?
What's that?
You need a Social Security card or no?
Yes, you'll need your social security card as well.
Alright.
Here's what I'll tell everybody, you grab everything that you ever viewed as important, take all that with you to the DMV, okay? Everything you got, take it with you, because when they get there, they'll just ask for it, you just hand it to them, and then everybody's happy. What I don't want is for you to go there and then to go, you don't have this? And they go, oh, I forgot it. No, take everything with you, okay? You have to prove residency. You must be a resident of New York State to be issued a permit. One proof of residency is required. Right? Everybody understands that, so again, you go into their list on the DMV site and figure out what proof of residency is. Normally it's just like a bill or something mailed to you within the last 30 days.
Excuse me, how about if you have a driver's license already with the Department of Motor Vehicle?
That, you still have to bring this stuff to table. You still have to bring it with you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not enough. Yes, sir.
I think all you need is the enhanced driver's license now. What about those?
The enhanced driver's license, it still won't meet all the criteria. They still want more when you're getting into this CDL. Okay. Okay. So, residency requirement, a driver holding CDL, another jurisdiction who moves here within the last 30 days. Anybody have that, establishing residency here? Okay, so if you're establishing residency, must apply for a New York CDL within 30 days. With your establishing residency, just make sure you take that mail with you, and that should go well. Age requirement, for Class A, you must be 21. For B and C, you must be at least 18, but if you're under 21, you can drive a commercial motor vehicle for interstate commerce within New York State. Everybody here is over 18? Great, so we got that covered. Language requirement, you must be able to read and speak the English language well enough to converse with other people, understand highway traffic signs and signals in the English language, answer questions from officials, make entries on reports and records, and take skills tests as required for getting your CDL. Does anybody not understand that part? So you have to be able to understand the English language.
I have a question.
Yes.
So that person couldn't get their CDL?
If you can't understand English and converse properly, no, they cannot.
Like, what if they can read lips really well?
Nope. If they're trying to read lips because of a hearing issue, that's a different situation. That's a different waiver that has to be accomplished, but it has nothing really to do with English. That's a hearing issue. It's a physical issue. What they're talking about in this aspect is the language barrier. So if we come in from a different area, we don't speak English, and that's a broken thing, where you're trying to talk with a translator, that we can't have. Just because there's so much going on out there, we can't have those mistakes. Okay, so Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, otherwise known as Fmcsa, that's the federal level, okay? Require all New York State commercial motor permits and CDL holders to certify with the Department of Motor Vehicles to the type of commercial operation they expect to perform. All permit holders and license holders must certify to one of the 4 categories listed in Figure 1.4, which is self-certification driving types. Basically, here's how it's going to work out. You have to show that you are physically able to drive that commercial motor vehicle safely. So we have to have a medical certificate done by the special medical people for this, certified doctor. So your regular doctor can't necessarily do it. It has to be DOT approved. Okay, you have to get your DOT medical card. Now, 4 categories that go with this, and here's how we break it down. Are you interstate or intrastate? Does everybody understand that difference? Intra is within New York only, inter is state to state. Okay, so there's 2 of the boxes that we're dealing with, left and right. Then, are we exempt or are we not exempt? And that's how we flip the boxes the other way. That's basically where we're coming up with these 4 boxes. Everybody understand that category? So that's where we get non-accepted, interstate. So this is basically, hey, we can do everything. And then we get accepted, interstate, which means, okay, we got some restrictions here, but we can still do interstate, okay? And this is talking in regards to the medical stuff. Non-accepted intrastate, which means K restriction, A3 restriction, you're not getting any medical certification with this, you just gotta stay in, there it is. And accepted intrastate. So, again, that gets into all that stuff. Interstate commerce is when you drive a commercial motor vehicle from one state to another, or foreign country, or between two places within New York State, but during part of the trip, the commercial motor vehicle crosses into another state or foreign country. So everybody understand that? Because that happens sometimes. You follow 86, I believe 86 dips down into Pennsylvania for a little stretch there. We're right next to Canada, okay? So again, you see how these are issues that we do need to pay attention to, more so than someone that's living in the middle of Kansas, okay? Between two places within New York State, but the cargo is part of a trip that began or will end in a different state or country. Okay, so we're just hauling it from point A to point B within New York, but the freight started, let's say, in Pennsylvania, or is ending in, let's say, Pennsylvania. Again, now they're gonna consider that interstate. Okay. Moving on, medical examiner's certificate or requirement here. Every 2 years is really the stipulation on that. And so every 2 years you have to go out and recertify. If you have some medical stuff going on, they may reduce that to 1 year, they may reduce it to 3 months, whatever that is, that's your business with that. So make sure you communicate that with your employers or whoever you're working with. You do have to stay up on this. Okay, so if your medical examiner's card certificate ends October 15th, at midnight on October 15th, they're gonna restrict your license. You've lost your commercial driving privileges. You can still drive your car, you just can't drive the commercial vehicle until that's reinstated, okay? Now, when you do your recertification, so right now most of you are probably just getting started with it, that's fine. But understand that if you go down the road, let's say within 2 years, make sure you get that done ahead of time. Don't wait till the day of, okay? Most employers are really good about keeping up with you on that. If you ask them questions, they can give you those answers very quickly. Any questions about the medical examiner stuff? Yes, sir.
Do you pay out of pocket for that, or don't the health insurance pay for it?
That's something that you'll talk with the employer, but I believe the employer is going to cover that in this scenario. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So, another thing I will tell you in regards to that, when you become a professional driver, okay, and I will always say the word professional driver, because that's what you are as a commercial operator. Everything is your responsibility, okay? So like in that aspect, paying for the physical, it's your responsibility to account for that. Not necessarily pay for it, but it's your responsibility to turn to your employer and say, by the way, this is due, what are we doing with this? You have to account for everything, even if that's just making sure someone else is going to do what they're going to do. And a lot of these questions will filter back to that as you're doing the permit. Who's responsible? And they're gonna drive this home, you're responsible. Okay, the physical examination conducted for just bus drivers who are subject to Article 19A of the New York State Vehicle and Traffic Law does not meet the requirements of Part 391 of the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations unless the federal medical standard procedures and forms were used and you received a medical examiner certificate. So with that said, all medical examiner certificates issued on or after May 21st, 2014 must be issued by a certified medical examiner and must contain the medical examiner's national registry number. We just covered that. Remember, I said you can't just have your regular doctor do this. They have to be registered to do this, okay? That's basically what's happening there. That's where you would fax all the information in. How long is it good for? We just talked about that. Remember, 2 years? Okay, if it's less than that, then it just repeats that way. Okay. If you have trouble finding an examiner, medical examiner, talk to us. You can go on the website here. You can talk to your potential employer. We can all direct you in many different directions. Okay, this is not complicated. I'm not going to get into, I'll talk about the exemptions just because they may put them in there. Medical exam or USDOT medical examiner certificate is not required if you self-certify as an accepted or exempt driving type. That's EA or EI. An accepted driving type applies to the following types: You transport school children to and/or school staff between home and school, federal, state, or local government employees, to transport human corpse or sick or injured persons, fire truck or rescue vehicles during emergencies and other related activities. Primarily in the transportation of propane winter heating fuel when responding to an emergency condition requiring immediate response, such as damage to a propane gas system after a storm or flooding. In response to a pipeline emergency condition requiring immediate response, such as pipeline leak or rupture. In custom harvesting on a farm, or to transport farm machinery and supplies used in a custom harvesting operation to and from, or to transport custom harvested crops to a storage or market. Beekeeper in the seasonal transportation of bees, controlled and operated by a farmer, but is not a combination vehicle, power unit, and tow unit, and is used to transport agricultural products within 150 miles. As a private motor carrier or passengers for non-business purposes, to transport migrant workers, but you must be 21 or older. Drivers who obtained their New York State CDL prior to 1999 are also exempt. Any questions yet? Have I lost anybody yet? Yes, sir.
So you have to have this EA or EI to do all the following?
So basically, everyone has to have the medical certificate,
Yep.
medical examiner,
Mhm.
and then there's just exceptions out of that.
Yep.
So whatever you're gonna do with regardless of who your employer is or potential employer is, make sure you understand what the requirements are there. After that, it's generally get the medical examiner no matter what. And just to validate that once again, what's your requirement coming into this facility as far as medical examiner certificates?
We have our own medical department within the NFTA, so part of your pre-employment physical will be meeting to get your 19A card, which is either 1 year or 2 year.
Okay, everybody understand that? Fantastic. Now, moving on, the application and written testing requirements. Complete the application, which is the NV44. You'll get that at the DMV office. You may actually have the forms. They may give them to you here. That's maybe something they'll talk about tomorrow night because it's different what they're doing here. You have to complete the application, but you have to provide proof of your legal presence in New York State or the US. Provide proof of your New York State residence and list all states, including District of Columbia, in which you're licensed to drive over the past 10 years. So you just have to provide that information, okay? We're good with that? You have to certify to the type of commercial operation you perform or expect to perform, and present a copy of your medical examiner certificate if you meet the federal requirements. Now, when are they going to test, Amy?
They're testing on Saturday.
Will they have their
Most of
medical
them are
cards
testing.
prior to that?
Pardon?
Will they have their medical cards prior to that?
No.
Okay. So when they go down to the Department of Motor Vehicles, are they aware of that situation?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so it's been covered. Again, any of those questions aimed towards that, ask Amy with that, and she's got it covered pretty tight from the sound of it. Yes, sir.
What if you already have one?
You still have to get certified by the NFTA.
So that one is like invalid then?
Well, it would be, I mean, depending on what you're driving for, if it's school bus, it's totally different, 19A physical. For us, 19A would be for the 40-foot school, 40-foot or the paratransit bus.
Okay.
So, and this is very common. I've had times where I've been physical like 4 or 5 times a year. Because you can have your own that you get, or you can have it from a prior employer, but most employers are going to ask that you just get a brand new physical. It's part of their pre-employment. There's a whole bunch of things that's just going into new employment. So it doesn't necessarily null and void, it's just, hey, we're updating it. Look at it as an update instead of the other one. You have to show your New York State driver's license, show your social security card. If New York State DMV has no record of your card number on file, I tell everybody take it down anyway. Pay the fees, pass the general knowledge test and any other necessary things to go with that. We talked about that. So in this scenario here, you'll be taking general knowledge, you'll be taking air brakes, and you'll be taking your passenger endorsement. Is that correct? We're good with that? Fantastic. All right, you have to pass those tests with at least an 80%, which means you can miss 2 out of every 10 questions. All right, your general knowledge will be 50 questions. All said and done, you'll probably be taking about 100 questions, give or take, just a little under. Okay. Federally mandated restrictions. This is something you need to be a little bit aware of, especially with what we're going into here. For the learner permit issued with a passenger or school bus endorsement, will automatically get a new federally mandated no passengers in the DMV bus. It's a P restriction, okay? Which basically means, hey, you don't have the license yet, you can't have people on board with you right now. That's what that's going to see. So when you get that permit and it says P restriction, you understand what they're talking about, okay? Commercial learner permits issued with tank vehicles automatically get a mandated no cargo in the tank. Again, if you run the tankers, they don't want any of that sloshing going on, so that will be another restriction, probably not something you're going to encounter here. Both of those restrictions, whichever one hits, as soon as your license is issued, when you pass your road test, those go away. It's an automatic, hey, it's done. Okay. Your commercial driver's learner permit allows you to drive a vehicle of the class and type that matches the class and then any endorsements of your permit, as long as your permit is accompanied by an underlying New York State driver's license. Your permit is separate than your license, so when you are out there driving, you need to carry both. Does everybody understand that? Okay, so it's illegal to carry more than one New York State driver's license on you, correct?
Mhm.
The permit is not a license, it's a permit. So this takes you out of that. Make sure you keep both. The mistake I've seen people make in the past is they will leave their driver's license home and say, oh, I got my picture ID, it's a permit. No, that's not working like that. I have had people that will cut up and destroy their driver's license thinking that that permit overrules everything, and it doesn't. You need to carry both with you at all times. Okay? Moving on, a driver holding a CDL of the same or higher class with the proper endorsements accompanies you at all times. So, yeah, you can't just take the permit, go jump in the bus and go for a joyride on your own. Please don't do that. I'm sure every trainer out there will get a little bit testy and a little bit fired up over that one. And yes, I've had that happen. Your permit and the supervising driver's CDL do not have any restrictions that would prohibit driving in the practice vehicle. So basically, everyone has to have the right license and permit and everything to drive that vehicle. And you are not transporting any material that requires hazmat. Skills test, you have to perform a skills test. We'll get into, well, they'll get into that later on, but basically you have to pass an inspection of the vehicle, you have to pass a backing or skills test, and you have to pass a driving section of it. Those are the three you have to pass. You know, good trainers, you should have no problem with that. Okay, demonstrator, I'm just gonna pass that because they're not gonna talk about this. Military waiver. Again, if you're military, you got a waiver going on, come see us after class. I'm not gonna bother talking about it because they won't have this on the permit, okay? Moving on. Alcohol and drug testing requirements. Under New York State law, any person who operates a motor vehicle in New York State is deemed to have given consent to a chemical test of one or more of the following, including breath, blood, urine, or saliva for the purpose of determining the alcohol and or drug content of the blood. It's called the Implied Consent Law in New York State, okay? This is happening all the time. So every employer is probably gonna be testing you. So if you have problems with things, or this may be an issue for you, now is a great time to go talk to an employer that you might be talking to. This is a good time to go discuss that, because this is going to happen, and I don't care how it works out. We'll talk about the circumstances where you get tested and how that works out, but if it's an issue, let any of us in on that whole thing. Sorry folks, I just keep working through this. Yes, anyway, so let's talk about that drug testing while I'm fixing what I just messed up. The drug testing issue that you're gonna have to work through, if you are on any prescribed medications, I will make this statement. Anything that you are prescribed, I tell all my students, and I don't care if you're driving a car, I don't care if you're driving a bus, I don't care if you're driving a tractor trailer. Any prescription medications, anything the doctor says, hey, you need to take this, on your doctor's letterhead, you need a letter from your doctor stating that the prescribed medications will not affect safe driving. Carry that with you any place and every place you go, okay? So if you have to go for a drug test, you gotta let them know what medications you're on, because they will show, all right? If you get pulled over, let's say you have an accident, they're gonna random test you, okay? It's better to have that on you. Because I have had people that went out there and they got driving under the influence even though they're prescribed medications. Okay, so be very cautious of that. If you want more information on that, stick around after class, I'll talk more about it. Commercial driver's license tests, again, we've talked about that. Moving on, knowledge tests, we've talked about which ones we need here. Any questions about the tests you need to take at the DMV? Yes, sir.
Do they do another eye exam too?
Will they do another eye exam? At the DMV for the permit, if you've already taken one, I don't believe they're gonna hit that again. I believe it's just that permit part that they're going after, cause you already have a valid driver's license.
Okay.
They will, when you do your medical test, your medical certification thing, you'll have to read there, you have to do the print there, you have to do the red versus green versus yellow type of thing.
Okay.
And you have to do a hearing test, stuff like that. I mean, there's that standard, but the eye test, because I know you're having a tough time, you wear glasses, you said, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, just make sure everybody's aware of that. Are your glasses on your license?
Yes.
Okay, so if you wear glasses and it's on your license, when you go for the road test, make sure you have another pair of glasses with you.
Okay.
Okay, that's part of that little stipulation. But, and again, when you got more questions in that area about the testing, feel free to talk to Amy, they'll take care of it. Okay, core knowledge, we talked about these. Any other questions on the testing? Okay, we're gonna jump through this then, skills test, I'm gonna jump through that, we already talked about that. Okay, additional requirements for bus drivers. All bus drivers in New York State must have a CDL, and employers must determine that the drivers they hire are qualified to drive buses. Furthermore, Article 19A, special requirements for bus drivers of the New York State Vehicle and Traffic Law sets standards for bus drivers. Under this law, employers of bus drivers must conduct a background investigation of new drivers' employment history for the past 3 years, obtain driving records for all jurisdictions where the driver worked, lived, or had a driver's license or permit in the last 3 years, tell drivers about the provisions of 19A, require that drivers take an initial physical examination and then follow-up exam every 2 years, annually review the driving record of each driver to determine if he or she meets the minimum requirements to drive a bus, annually observe each driver's defensive driving performance while operating a bus carrying passengers. Give each driver a written or oral examination every 2 years to test his or her knowledge of the rules of the road, defensive driving practices, and laws regarding or regulating bus driving in New York State. They also have to give each driver a behind-the-wheel driving test every 2 years. So you see how you're kind of getting looked over every couple of years. You're kind of in a routine here. Get used to that. Here's the thing, if you do it right, none of this is ever a problem. That's to keep in mind, okay? If you're sitting there going, ooh, I don't know, you're in the wrong seat. Look at that. Okay, they also subject the driver who fails to provide notification of convictions and accidents to a 5 working day suspension, or if the convictions for a misdemeanor or felony, a suspension equivalent to the number of working days a driver was not in compliance with the reporting requirements of 5 working days, whichever is longer. Now, you want to kind of highlight that first statement there. So if you fail to notify your employer here of convictions and accidents within 5 working days, that's a working day of 5-day suspension. You got to report it by the end of the working day. You got 5-day suspension on that. So make sure, because I have seen that come up in one of the tests before. You know, what's the suspension period if you didn't report any issues to your employer?
That includes your personal vehicle too.
Yes. Yep. Anything you have on the road, you have to have that. Yep. So yeah, you went out, you just got a DWI. You think you should tell your employer? Yeah, that'd be a good one, folks. Kind of need to do that. And here's the thing: when in doubt, talk to your employer. I can't stress that enough. Talk to your employer, and they'll talk you through everything. You're better off having them know than not know. Additional requirements for school bus drivers. Again, I'm not going to get into that. Driver disqualifications. This is something we do need to talk about. This will most likely be on the permit test, okay? You're gonna find that more after, what if you screw something up, what's gonna happen with that? That's disqualifications more than the other end of things. Meaning, are they gonna ask you what the law is? Not necessarily the more interesting, hey, you know, if you screw this up, we're done. So you will lose your commercial learner permit and or CDL, okay? Now let me start here. It's illegal to operate a commercial motor vehicle if your blood alcohol content is 0.04 or more. If you operate a commercial motor vehicle, you shall be deemed to have given consent to your alcohol testing. You will be put out of service for 24 hours if you have any detectable amount of alcohol under 0.04. Does everybody understand that? Okay, we're good with that. Do you know what it is in your car? 0.05, right? Okay. Here's one thing I want to point out though. This last part, any detectable amount. So you really, we're zero tolerance in the commercial industry. Now you will lose your permit or your CDL for at least 1 year on the first offense. Okay. Driving a commercial motor vehicle with, if your blood alcohol concentration is 0.04 or higher. Done, 1 year, right out of the gate. Driving any vehicle under the influence of alcohol. So if you get a DWI in your car, you're done for a year, you're in the CDL. Driving any vehicle while under the influence of a controlled substance. Again, don't play the game. Know what you got going on. Refusing to undergo blood alcohol testing. So, okay, let's talk about that. Under the Implied Consent Laws of New York State, you have to submit to testing. Do you still have the right to deny that? Sure, it's your personal body. But your driver's license, any license you have is automatically gone for 1 year, folks. Automatic. Okay? So, I tell everybody, if you don't want to play this game, just don't drink and drive. There's so many other options. And it just increases the level of issue here when you have a CDL by a great deal. Okay? Any questions on this? If you leave the scene of an accident without reporting, committing a felony involving use of a vehicle, operating, this one makes me laugh. Okay? They don't make good getaway vehicles. Stop doing that, okay? And operating a commercial motor vehicle while your permit or CDL is revoked, suspended, or canceled for prior violations, or disqualified from operating a commercial motor vehicle, or if convicted for causing a fatality through negligent operation of a commercial motor vehicle, including but not limited to crimes of vehicular manslaughter or criminally negligent homicide. Any questions on this? Okay, so, yes, sir.
What about marijuana?
Controlled substance, isn't it? Just because, and you're gonna find this, because I get hit with this question all the time. Well, what if it's legalized and this amount, that amount? Okay, you're driving a commercial motor vehicle. I don't care if it's 100% legal everywhere, but you can't have it when you're driving. No issues, no substances. Yes, ma'am?
So the NFTA files FTA rules, which bans any kind of substance, including marijuana. You cannot use it.
Everybody understand that? Yes, sir.
And some people don't know, if you drink today and think you got a hangover the next day, it still be alcohol in your system still too also.
Correct. It normally leaves the body at a rate of 1 drink per hour on the average person, but again, if you're on call, you're still under an issue. And if you can't get it out of your system, it's still an issue. So yes, biggest thing is just don't do it. You know, I've got a $1 million career. I haven't been an owner-operator. I gave up drinking basically when I went into trucking as an owner-operator. So, we're done with that. You know, because you're always on call then, it's always an issue. And the last thing you want is any detectable amount in your system at all. Okay? Any other questions about this stuff? Okay, yes, sir.
Okay, if you were, actually you smoked marijuana 2 or 3 years ago, and that was it, and then it was done, and then here we are now, and you're trying to become the driver and all things. Does that affect you?
As long as it's out of your system, you're not constantly using, it's not detectable, it's not an issue today, nor is it a detectable issue. No, unless, if you have an issue where you're addicted to it, well, then it's kind of an issue.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? But I know that stuff, some things stay in the body longer than others. I will go that direction, and it can't be traced. We're done with that. So if they do a hair follicle test, we want to make sure that that does not show on that test as well. So if you smoked, let's say last month, and you're like, I'll straighten it out by the time I get there, that may still pop a test. I'm not even qualified in that area, but I'm just saying, you may want to have a conversation with someone now rather than later, okay? Because everyone here, I'm positive, everyone here is trying to help. Everyone is trying to help you get to where you want to be in a successful life. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other questions on this before I continue? Serious traffic violations then? Let's talk about that. Serious traffic violations include the following. Excessive speeding, and that is defined as 15 or more over the speed limit. Okay? Reckless driving. Improper or erratic lane changes. Following too closely, otherwise known as tailgating. Traffic offenses committed in a commercial motor vehicle in connection with fatal traffic accidents. Operating a commercial motor vehicle without first obtaining your permit or CDL. Operating a commercial motor vehicle without a permit or CDL in the driver's possession. So again, everything has to be with you at all times. So even if you become a driver and you're driving down the road, you don't have your license on you that day, that's a problem. Yes, sir.
You talked a little bit about that, you're probably gonna get into it later, but, yeah, I have an enhanced license, so when I get my CDL or, you know, class license, do I still carry my enhanced license? You said you can't carry two licenses.
The enhanced, well, yeah, it just overlaps. Like right now, you have the enhanced driver's license. The enhanced part is more of the background check and where the clearance will go with that. That follows through on to the next one. Okay, so enhanced is just enhanced. That's the extra
So
stuff.
when they
The
give me
license,
the
the license.
CDL license, that one
So-
will supersede that one and I can put the
Well-
other one away? Or I still carry two?
It's like a carryover, it's like a blanket.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, an officer, a police officer, they are still a police officer whether they have the Class A, Class B, or D license. That's how I would view the enhanced. It stays there.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, now, any other questions on this? Fantastic. Now, you will lose your permit or your CDL. Okay, now I'm just getting annoyed with this. And if anybody knows how to fix that on that computer, see me in break here, okay? Because that's been doing that an awful lot to me. Now, with that, the permit or CDL, you'll lose it for at least 60 days if you commit 2 of those in a 3-year period. Can you bear with me on that? You will lose it for at least 120 days for 3 serious traffic violations within 3 years. So you see how those things are kind of serious. We want to make sure we're not speeding, make sure we're not driving recklessly. Again, if you drive a clean thing, this is not an issue. But know that this is over like a 3-year period. So this is sticking with you very, very long. Out of service orders. Let's talk about out of service.
Wait, so
Yes.
that's for driving in your own car also?
These are tickets issued regardless of vehicle, yes. So speeding is speeding. You get a speeding ticket in your personal vehicle and you're doing 20 over the speed limit, you get convicted of that, yeah, you better make sure your employer knows what's going on. So we are going to be held to a higher standard regardless of what vehicle we're in some aspects. Now, like your DWI, your .04, .05, that's pertinent to the vehicle you're operating. So if I'm operating a Class D vehicle without commercial plates on it, just a personal passenger vehicle, it's .05. If I operate something with commercial plates on it, or a commercial vehicle, now my threshold's .04. So, yes, sir.
If you get a speeding ticket, you won't get suspended, right, in your personal vehicle?
A speeding ticket is a speeding ticket regardless of the vehicle you got it in.
And you will get suspended, correct?
Well, you'd have to have 2 of these,
Okay,
okay, within the 6 months, folks.
alright.
You're gonna see me come unglued here in a minute. For at least 60 days, if you committed 2 serious traffic violations within 3 years.
Okay.
So it's a following 3 years, if you did 2 of those, that would get that. So if you had 2 of those speeding tickets, yes. Now we have a problem, 60 days it's gone.
Okay.
Commercial wise.
Okay.
We're good? Don't worry, folks, we're almost getting to break time. We're almost there, hang in there with me. Out of service orders, let's talk about out of service. There are 2 things that can be marked out of service, because there's only 2 things that we're really dealing with when it comes to commercial vehicles. The operator or the vehicle itself. Does everybody understand that? Out of service means you are done, you cannot operate. And that goes in either aspect. So let's say the driver's doing something, they didn't get enough sleep, they were whatever, or you didn't have your license, whatever, you are marked out of service as a driver. That means someone else can come over with a good license and pick up that vehicle and go. Okay? Or we could have the vehicle out of service. Okay? If the vehicle's out of service, that doesn't mean you can't drive, it just means that vehicle can't operate until it's fixed. Okay? Now, this has to happen. Okay, so you cannot go, if the officer stops you and they put one of those out of service, you can't go past that, you can't go out of spec with that. If you do, if you violate those, okay, you will lose your permit or your CDL if convicted of operating and in violation of out of service order for at least 90 days for the first violation. You probably want to know that for the permit. 90 days for the first violation of that. They don't want you violating that at all, okay? For at least 1 year if you've committed 2 violations within a 10-year period. For at least 3 years if you've committed 3 or more violations of out of service orders within a 10-year period. So they're watching you over 10 years. Don't play this game. If something's out of service, just get it fixed. That's the bottom line. Okay, we're good with this? Okay. Railroad, highway grade crossing violations. These violations, while operating a commercial motor vehicle, see how we changed that now? While operating a commercial motor vehicle, include violation of federal, state, or local law or regulation permitting to one of the following 6 offenses at railroad highway grade crossings. You should know these, okay? This will be on that test somewhere. They're gonna talk about railroads. This is a big deal when it comes to railroads. For drivers who are not required to always stop, failing to stop before reaching the crossing if the tracks are not clear, okay? 2, for drivers who are not required to always stop, failing to slow down and check that the tracks are clear of an approaching train. 3, for drivers who are always required to stop, failing to stop before driving onto the crossing, right? 4, for drivers failing to have sufficient space to drive completely through the crossing without stopping, okay? So crossing isn't necessarily the last rail, okay? We have to get away from the rail because we know the trains are wider. 15 feet to either side of the rails is really what we're after when we're talking about crossing. Okay? For all drivers failing to obey traffic control device or directions of an enforcement official at the crossing. For all drivers failing to negotiate a crossing because of insufficient undercarriage clearance. That's it. It has a big hump on it. You get stuck on the hump. Yeah, don't want that. Any questions on this? These are serious. There are 2 vehicles that need to stop for railroad tracks regardless. Passengers and hazmat. And guess which one you're looking at a career in? Passenger. Okay, now, you will lose your permit or your license. First offense, 60 days. Okay. You'll lose it for 120 days for a second violation within 3 years, and you'll lose it for 1 year for your third violation in 3 years. So again, they're taking this kind of serious. We're good with this? Okay, I'm not going to get into hazardous materials. Traffic violations in your personal vehicle, I will cover this. Federal and state rules require a permit and CDL holder to be disqualified from operating a commercial motor vehicle if the permit or CDL holder has been convicted of certain types of moving violations in their personal vehicle. These are the ones you will need to know, okay? Leaving the scene of an accident, violations involving alcohol and/or drugs, and felonies involving a motor vehicle. Those carry straight across the board. I don't care what you're driving. This will affect your CDL no matter what, and this is a bad situation. Okay? Now, if you're privileged to operate your personal vehicles revoked, canceled, or suspended due to violations of traffic control laws, other than parking, you will also lose your commercial driving privileges. If you're privileged to operate your personal vehicle is revoked, canceled, or suspended due to alcohol, controlled substance, or felony violations, you will lose your CLP or CDL for 1 year. If you are convicted of a second such violation in your personal vehicle or commercial vehicle, you will lose your CLP or CDL for life. So they're not going to play that game. It's all done. Okay? If your license to operate your personal vehicle is revoked, canceled, or suspended, you may not obtain a hardship license. Do you understand what a hardship license is? So let's say you get a DWI or something, you get your license suspended, okay, or revoked, and you still have to get from home to work, or home to the grocery store, or home to get medicine. That will give you what's called a hardship license. That does not apply to a CDL. So if you say, oh, yeah, I got my CDL to get to work. No, you don't. Well, I drive bus. Not anymore. Okay? So this is stuff, again, you really want to stay away from. Take it as serious as you possibly can. All right, we're almost through this section. We'll finish up this section, and then I'll take a quick break for you. Other commercial privilege rules, licensing rules. No one can drive a commercial motor vehicle without a permit or a license, or can fine you between $75 and $300. You cannot have more than 1 license. If you break this rule, a court may fine you between $75 and $300, or put you in jail, or keep your home state license. So again, that's where we get back into, we talked about this, only having 1 license. Everybody with me on that?
Yes.
So if you have a Florida license, and then you come to New York, you get a New York license, you can't have that Florida license. That's done, okay? That needs to be turned in, shut down, disqualified, it's done. And don't carry them both on you. That's a big no-no, okay? If you have a hazardous materials endorsement, I'm not going to get into that. If you're not to citizenship, all states are connected to one computerized system. This you need to know. to share about permit holders and CDL drivers. The states will check driving records to make sure drivers do not have more than one permit or one CDL. Another thing, they'll make a statement about that, if you have any history that you didn't clear up, make sure you talk about that soon. So let's say you got a ticket down in North Carolina that you just said, I'm not gonna do anything about it, 20 years ago. That will bite you. So if you got that going on, get it checked out and talk to the potential employer and say, hey, I gotta check this out. I've seen that bite people several times. You must be properly restrained by a safety, okay, wear your seatbelt. Any questions on that one? Okay. Employment rules, this is something you need to know. This first bullet I've seen several times on the permit test. You must give your employer information on all driving jobs held for the past 10 years. You must do this when you apply for a commercial job. You must notify your employer within 30 days of a conviction for any traffic violations except parking. That's true no matter what type of vehicle you are driving. You must notify your employer if your license is suspended, revoked, or canceled, or if you are disqualified from driving. Your employer may not let you drive a commercial motor vehicle if you have more than one license, or if your permit or license is suspended, revoked, or canceled, and a court can fine the employer up to $5,000 and put them in jail. So again, no one's gonna play this game. I'm not gonna talk about tax, excuse me. When we start dealing interstate, we have a registration for our vehicles in New York State. All these other states have registration stuff going on. So if you're driving interstate, commercially, there's a plan we get into with that. Tax is charged per mile, fuel tax in every state you drive. That's your fuel tax. I'm not gonna get into that. Excuse me, and then you have just New York State tax of their fuel, and I'm not gonna get into that.